Hey guys, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Monday, not Sunday, and we are doing breaches of the week. We are a day late, but not a dollar short here. I was obviously at a conference, as you guys probably saw from my past videos, and so I just did not have time to compile all of the notes that I got from everybody, as well as my own research. So everybody that sent something in, thank you very much. Shouts out to Chris Fallon, Scott Bernstein, Andy Emmons, and some others. Guys, you're obviously always awesome. But we're going to dive right in here, and we're going to talk about a lot of different things, and we are going to end this with the Capital One data breach, because quite frankly, that has been in the news, even though there's a zillion other data breaches we're about to talk about. And we're going to break the Capital One data breach down, because there are some serious things I don't think a lot of people realize, and where the direction of this is heading with the lawsuits, I don't necessarily think is a good thing, but we're going to get to that. So where we are going to start, per my notes here, is basically the state of Georgia. Now, they are having a ransomware attack problem over the last couple of weeks, and a lot of you guys sent in stuff on this, and I had to pull it from a couple of different sources, but we are looking at the Georgia State Patrol, the Georgia Department of Public Health, and other various services in the state of Georgia basically having some kind of ransomware attack. Now, like, for example, we have one article here where the state police are saying, well, this really didn't affect anything, and they're not really saying what's going on. I've got another article here that is telling me that laptops have been affected in some patrol cars and other places in the Georgia Department of Health. And so information is bleeding out. Georgia does not seem to be uniformed, primarily because I think multiple departments probably have their multiple people responding to this. But if you are in the state of Georgia, heads up, your public services are currently under attack, and hopefully it's being remediated. And if you work for the state of Georgia, guys, really start coordinating this. Just make my life easier. Moving on, we're going to be talking about the LAPD, that is the Los Angeles Police Department. Like the Georgia State Police, they suffered a data breach, although in a slightly different way. It wasn't a ransomware attack from what I understand, but this breach reportedly exposed names, email addresses, passwords, and birth dates for police officers and applicants, basically those wanting to be police. Now, according to local media in Los Angeles, the personal information of about 2,500 LAPD officers and approximately 17,500 police officer applicants were exposed during a data breach that was discovered on July 25th of this year. So if you are an applicant to the LAPD or in the LAPD, heads up to you. Moving on, we're going to be talking about a company called Poshmark. Now, they're a clothing resale marketplace, and I quote their announcement, "We recently discovered that data from some Poshmark users was acquired by an unauthorized third party." Now, the information stolen, according to reports, is a customer's username, first and last name, gender, city, clothes size preference, email address, and hashed password. Hopefully those hashed passwords are good and not easily cracked. Now, the data also included social media profile information collected when users connect social media accounts to Poshmark. So basically, if you're using something like a Facebook as a single sign-on into Poshmark, they now have that information as well. So here we go. If you have anything to do with Poshmark, heads up to you. Next, we're moving on to Germany. Now, for about the past couple of weeks or so, Germany's actually been kind of under attack, or at least their population has, with a new strain of ransomware that is being called German Wiper. Now, what's interesting about this ransomware is that it doesn't encrypt files, but instead it rewrites their contents with zero, permanently destroying the user's data. Now, as a result of this, if you get affected with German Wiper, you should be aware that if you are paying the ransom, you're not going to get your data back. It's blowing your data out, and they're still taking your money. This is not like normal ransomware where they encrypt it, you pay, and sometimes you get it back. So heads up to you if you're in Germany or you're affected by German Wiper, a new variant of ransomware. Don't pay the ransomware, and please, I hope you have good backups, both on-prem and in the cloud. Moving on, we're going to be talking about Sephora. This is an online cosmetic, we're going to be talking about their online accounts and their online app, but they are a cosmetic maker. That's what I meant to say. Now, they just discovered a data breach on July 31st, about 2 weeks or so after it happened. And so if you are a customer of them from Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Thailand, Australia, Hong Kong, and New Zealand, your personal information may be compromised. Now, according to Sephora, credit card information was not there, but other types of information breaching were. So if you use Sephora online from any one of those countries that I just mentioned, or you use their app, heads up to you. Moving on, we're going to be talking about the Presbyterian Health Services. They just reported a data breach that allowed an unauthorized access of a third party to about 183 patient and health plan members. Now, according to the reports, this is names, dates of birth, social security numbers, and other types of information. Basically, what happened was a Presbyterian employee responded to a phishing email, surprise, surprise, and basically the hackers got access. Now, make sure that if you deal with Presbyterian Health Services, if you are in New Mexico, you may be the ones that are affected, because Presbyterian Health is saying that New Mexico residents are the ones that have been primarily affected by this. If you're on the border of New Mexico, you might want to check that too. Moving on, let's go to Puerto Rico. Now, 2 hospitals in Puerto Rico have been hit with ransomware affecting over 520,000 patients' data. Now, the Bayaman Medical Center says about 423,000 patients have been potentially affected, and the Puerto Rico Women's and Children's Hospital says about 100,000 patients may have been affected. And so, FYI, if you're in Puerto Rico, one, I hope you guys have fully recovered from the hurricane that you guys had a while back, and I'm really sorry to tell you that your data might have been hit and ransomed if you use either one of these medical facilities, but heads up to you. Moving on, we're going to be talking about a company called StockX. Now, this is a fashion and sneaker trading platform. They basically, and this is interesting, pushed out a password reset basically to their users this past Thursday, citing system updates. But here's the thing. StockX told their users that this email was legitimate, because some users were like, well, this looks like a phishing email. So StockX followed up and said, this is confirmed. It's not a phishing email. But they did not say what caused the system update or why they were doing this or prior warning. A spokesman for StockX told TechCrunch, where I got this article from, that the company was alerted to suspicious activity on its site but declined to comment further. But that wasn't the whole truth. Now, what's interesting, and TechCrunch is involved with this, is an unnamed data breach seller, basically a data broker on the dark web, contacted TechCrunch, said that they had more than 6.8 million records from StockX that they had basically gotten in May, and the seller declined to say how they got the information, but they showed proof of concept of proof of ransom by showing over 1,000 results to this. So it looks like StockX had a data breach, discovered it, changed passwords, and told everybody it was a system update, even though they were hacked. That is the news as I've laid out. You can make your own decisions there. But if you have anything to do with StockX, you might want to make sure your password is indeed changed, and you're looking into that. Moving on, we're going to be talking about Cafe Press. Now, I'm sure half of you that are watching this have probably bought something from Cafe Press before. They basically do like custom t-shirts and merchandise, coffee cups, like all this kind of stuff. I'm pretty sure I've purchased something at Cafe Press in the last decade or so. But according to various reports, they had a compromise of more than 23 million accounts that happened on February 20 of this year, but very little is known right now. They're keeping tight-lipped on this. If I have more information on Cafe Press, you know I'll update you, usually on Sundays on Breaches of the Week. And from here, we're going to move on to Naples, Florida. Now, the city basically just suffered an attack that resulted in the loss of $700,000 due to a sophisticated spear phishing campaign. Now, if you are not familiar with spear phishing, this is basically phishing email, but it is directly targeted at a person or a department and very custom tailored to make it look like somebody that would be in an authority to basically extract money. Usually when we see these, it's the CEO or the CFO emailing something like the controller saying, hey, the deal is done, move $1 million to, China or wherever. And the controller says, well, I got an email from my CEO and it's just another day at the multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. Let's go ahead and move $1 million. That's what a spear phishing campaign is. It's very tailored. It's not the generic, please reset your password that, everybody gets. And so the city manager said from Naples, and I quote, "This attack was not malware or ransomware, and no data breach occurred. The city has and will continue to make improvements to our information technology systems." Basically, they might be improving their systems, but what they really need to improve is their user education. A lot of people don't realize in cybersecurity that it's not just really having cool hardware and software and advanced enterprise systems and all of this. If your people suck, they're gonna get hit. And this is what happens. And people are good people, but if they just don't understand and they're not made aware through training and all of this, they're gonna suck at cybersecurity. That's just the end of the game. And that's just the name of the game. It really, really is. So Naples, while you're getting all of these really cool, sophisticated things, please, please, please put everybody through awareness training, even your city manager, and especially those that have the ability to move money. Now, let's talk about Capital One, because good Lord, this dominated the news. I even posted a picture on it with Samuel L. Jackson, because now everybody knows what's in your wallet. It has been absolutely nuts out there. And so let's go through this. A week ago today, Capital One announced that a hacker had basically accessed 100 million credit card applications, and basically investigators were saying thousands of Social Security and bank account numbers were also taken. Now, this is coming from multiple news sources that I've aggregated and put together. So we're going to go through this step by step. The FBI arrested a woman in Seattle named Paige A. Thompson, and we will be talking about Miss Thompson, later on here. And basically, this is on a charge of computer fraud and abuse, and that is according to the court records that were publicly filed. Now, this hack appears to be one of the obviously the largest hit in the financial industry, and according to Richard D. Fairbanks, he is Capital One's chairman and chief executive. He said, and I quote, "While I am grateful that the perpetrator has been caught, I am deeply sorry for what has happened. I sincerely apologize for the understandable worry this incident must be causing those affected, and I am committed to making this right." And he absolutely has to. I have no doubt that Capital One will be offering everybody with a Capital One account, free year of credit monitoring. That is not largesse. That is compliance law. But let's move on and talk about Miss Thompson for a moment, because she is at one of the centers of this. And there are two critical things I think that are going on outside of the breach itself, which is absolutely awful. But we have two different things going on that I think need addressing. And the first one is Miss Thompson. Now, from what we know, she is a 33-year-old former Amazon employee from Seattle, Washington. And Ms. Thompson, using an alias, basically boasted about this hack on social media and appears to have obtained information on several other companies, government entities, educational institutions, and other things, according to court documents. Now, Monday, meaning a week ago, after the FBI agents searched her home and found files and information related to both Capital One and her former employer, according to this lawsuit, agents also found an online alias of hers that was quote unquote erratic, and it was allegedly connected to her, because obviously she has not been convicted of this, so everything is allegedly, where she had posted online in late June about having information on several companies, government entities, and educational entities, according to this complaint. Now, if we're looking at the timeline here, in June, according to the court documents, Thompson began posting some of the stolen Capital One files on GitHub. Now, if you're not familiar with GitHub, now owned by Microsoft, that's a recent purchase, I want to say in the last year or so. Basically, this is a website for developers that we can use as a repository to put in code, other information. We can share it, we can make it private, we can do all of these kinds of things. So she started posting information, stolen information from Capital One onto GitHub publicly, and she also began posting this information on Twitter and in a group chat where she invited others to join on a messaging forum in Slack. Slack is a communication standard that a lot of companies and entities use. I'm actually a really big fan of Slack, but you can sign up and get a free account with Slack. You don't have to pay for it. Now, on July 17th, if we're fast forwarding from June, a person actually emailed Capital One, and I quote, "There appeared to be some leaked S3 data of yours." S3 refers to Amazon, the S3 bucket. That's typically what most companies get. That's where you're basically going to store your data if you're hosting with Amazon. So what they're saying is Amazon, is hosting this for Capital One. Capital One was hosting on Amazon S3, and her being a former employee of Amazon may know some tips and tricks on how to properly get around, let's say, some of the standard defenses that Amazon has, something along those lines. But she was posting this on GitHub, and a good Samaritan, emailed Capital One on this. So basically, Capital One, after looking into this, then informed the FBI, which is pretty standard procedure for a financial institution, as required by both FFIEC and GLBA regulation, if I'm remembering my compliances correctly in terms of notifying authorities on this. Now, here's where GitHub comes into play with this, because obviously she's been arrested, she's been tried for her alleged crimes and all of that. The evidence seems to be overwhelming, but obviously we're not a court of law, nor are we going to convict her ahead of time, but she is going to go through this. So Ms. Thompson is the one aspect of this, but GitHub is the other aspect of this, where I think this is taking a rather negative turn. And the reason why I'm talking about this right now is that the law firm of Tycho Zavarei LLP has filed a class action lawsuit against GitHub for its links to this Capital One hack, alleging that the company is guilty of negligence per se, violation of the Federal Wiretap Act, and violation of California Civil Code. The suit also is charging Capital One as well, but again, Capital One is going to be targeted for class action lawsuits in the same way that Equifax was and everything else. Now, the 28-page lawsuit that was filed Thursday, so about 5 days ago or so, in U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California, asserted that GitHub, and I quote, actively encourages at least friendly hacking, end quote. And so that, I think, is what we really need to dive into. We see data breaches all the time. It is absolutely awful if you're a Capital One member, in the same way that it was awful for pretty much every man, woman, and child living in debt to be hit by Equifax. Breaches are awful. Breaches suck. This is not good at all. But we are looking at platforms that are primarily being used for good. And I'm surprised Slack wasn't mentioned as well here, because she was sharing information on Slack. But when we have platforms that people can use, and overwhelmingly the majority of people are using GitHub, myself included, to publish and develop, to share knowledge, to do all of these things. I've never once posted anything illegal or copyrighted, infringed on copyright, if you will, into GitHub. And overwhelmingly, the developers I know don't. We like to share, we collaborate, we do all of these kinds of things. I use GitHub very sparingly, compared to my friends that do a lot of hardcore developing. But the point is that this is an open platform that is used. This is one of the reasons why Microsoft bought it, because they're fostering that relationship with Linux and other operating systems and other development codes outside of the Microsoft ecosystem, because it allows for open collaboration. That does not encourage hacking, in the same way that, me buying an axe to cut down a tree in my backyard does not encourage me to go put on a hockey mask and terrorize teenagers at a lake. I mean, it's a different thing. It's a different animal. And I really hope that this lawsuit from GitHub fails, and I really hope that it sets a precedent in U.S. law to say, you know what, we have these platforms that people are using in an open and collaborative manner, and we need to keep this up. And while we have one rotten apple, we have 10 million apples that are perfectly fine, and I don't think that's right. And so that is your complete data breach news of the day. It has been a crazy, crazy week, but Capital One really needed to be dove into. I hope Ms. Thompson, if guilty, is prosecuted to the full extent of the law. I hope the information from Capital One is not as damaging as it is, and I hope that GitHub, Slack, and any other platform, including Twitter, basically is not held accountable for this individual's actions. Feel free to disagree with me. That's my 2 cents on the whole thing. I know some of you guys were interested in hearing what I had to say. That is my news of the day, and that is my opinion. So take it for what it's worth. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, guys.